Hello and welcome. My name is Stefan Czech. I'm living in Germany. I'm a DOP, Steadicam operator and filmmaker. And today it's a really special day because I finished the review or the podcast on one of the most wanted things in 2014 in the film industry. This baby, the Atomos Shogun. It's around 8 months after Jeremy Young, the CEO of Atomos, announced the Shogun on the NEB 2014 in Las Vegas. And it was a huge success. Everybody wants to have it because this is worldwide the first 4K recorder capable to capture the signal over HDMI. Okay, let's start and let's see what we get with the Atomos Shogun 4K recorder. First of all, it's a nice package and everything you need. There's a rugged case, everything fits in there, and the first thing you have to do when you open it, download the newest firmware and upload it on this device. This is really important. You have 5 master caddies for the recording device. You have a battery adapter for D-tap. And in the lower compartment you have the charger, you have all the adapter for the ACs, you have the docking station, and you have the Luma audio connector. Everything you need is in the box. After the Samurai blade and the Ninja blade, now with the Shogun the family is complete. 4K recording, of course, and HD as in the Ninja and the Samurai blade. On the right side of the device there is a power switch, the analog audio in and a DC in. On the left side we have the HDMI in and out and the headphone jack. On the back side we have the space for the recording medium, the battery, and we have SDI in and out. This means we have a converter from SDI to HDMI and the other way around. And we have a Genlock in also. On the back side we see the tally light. We can switch it off if we want in the software. And we have here the analog Hdmi Connector with XLR professional adapters. And now we had only to put the Lemo into the Shogun and we are ready to go. If line or microphone with or without power, no problem, because the Shogun delivers also phantom power for the microphone. This is really cool. What else we need? A storage device. If you want to record 4K, you need an SSD. If you only want to record HD, a normal spinning hard drive fits. Please visit the website of Atomos and look for the recommended drives. And for the connection between your camera and the Shogun, you need a cable. You need an HDMI cable or an SDI cable. For the HDMI cable on the side of the Shogun, you need a big one, the normal size. And we want to see what's happened when we bring the Shogun to the Sony A7S or the Panasonic GH4. And what is with the Canon C100? Last but not least, the Canon 5D Mark III. But before, a short overview over the menu. Input is the first point. The source is HDMI or SDI. At the moment, it's an A7S connected via HDMI to the Shogun. In the middle, we have the trigger. We have to choose between none, timecode or HDMI. If we use HDMI, now we can trigger from the camera trigger, also the recording starts on the Shogun. On the right side, we see what we record, which kind of source we record and which output we have also. In a moment, we have just that we record 4K. In the record format overview, we see we have Apple ProRes in HQ, 422 and LT, and we can switch the quality on the flight. Depending on the space of the hard drive or the SSD we have in the Shogun, we see immediately how long we can record. So the recording time you see is dependent on the size of the disk and of the recording format. So if you choose HD, it's 4 times longer. You have 4 times longer time to record. On the right upper corner, we have the overview over the battery. On the left side is the battery. On the right side, you see I have connected the Shogun with a DC in the wall. A tap on the audio meter brings the audio menu up. You see I select channel 1 and 2 with the record button is red, and you see the headphone jack. It means at the moment I listen to this track. We have 8 tracks for HDMI and 12 tracks for HD SDI. With a tap on this, you can select or deselect a track. When you put a microphone in the audio in of the Shogun, you have to select also this line. Otherwise, you didn't get any sound. And here you can adjust the input gain, the output gain. You can adjust if you have a microphone with or without power, with phantom power. You can adjust if it's a mic level or a line in level or whatever. And you can also adjust if the page is vertical or horizontal. There's another really important point. There is audio delay in frames. What does it mean? When you record with a camera that delivers video and audio synchronized over HDMI, everything is okay. But if you record the audio separately over a microphone or an audio recorder and brings this over the analog into the Shogun, you might have a difference between the lip sync of the video and the sound. For this, you can use this audio delay. For instance, a 5D Mark III where you have to record your voice or your sound separately, 5 to 6 frames as audio delay is perfect. Then your audio and your video will be in sync. To repeat, the sound is earlier in the recorder than the picture from the camera over HDMI. You have to delay the sound because otherwise the sound is a little bit before the picture. Now let's come to our toolbox. First is the waveform monitor. The waveform monitor shows the exposure over the whole picture. With a tab on the left corner, I can adjust where I want to see this waveform monitor. And I can adjust the transparency and the brightness of the overlay of the waveform monitor. Also, we have the Luma Parade. This is the waveform monitor divided into 3 main colors. But I am personally not a big fan of the waveform monitor, and I will explain it a little bit later. Let's come up to a really important tool, and this is the vector scope. I'm pretty sure that everybody of you has an idea what a vector scope is and how to use it in a video shoot. But for the 2 guys of you who have no idea or not really understand how useful this vector scope is, I want to explain. The vector scope shows you the color balance between the red, blue, yellow, green, cyan, and so on. In the middle we have a cross. So our goal is, if we have a neutral things in the front, like here with the spider checker and the gray side, I want to have everything in the middle, right over the cross. So I adjust the camera, the Sony A7S, to 3000 Kelvin. So much too blue, much too cold for this. And now I adjust the Kelvin on the camera, and you see, boom, I'm nearly in the middle. That is not perfect in the middle, is because the picture has some other lights and some other color, but this is really close to a neutral white balance. Here we have another example. On the right side we see the back screen of a 5D Mark III. And on the left side we see the Shogun with the signal from the 5D. And we see we have 2 different colors. So if I trust the color on the 5D, I have a bluisher, more colder picture. But the camera records this, what you see on the left side. This is a big problem on many cameras, that you can't trust the display. To make it visible how useful the vector scope is, I used an LEDzilla, the LED light from Dedolight. It is B color, and I can adjust the color temperature from 2700 Kelvin up to 6400 Kelvin. With this I lighted my 18% gray scale in the front, and I look at the color temperature on the 5D, and it's 5800. Bring up the vector scope and it's perfect in the middle, but it looks too blue on the camera display. What will I do? Of course, I will warm it up. So I push up the Kelvin up to 6400 Kelvin, and now it looks really good on the display. But when you look on the vector scope of the signal, it's much too red. And I think you get an idea how quick and easy it is, the color temperature to adjust with the vector scope. I changed the color with the LEDzilla again and readjust this with the color temperature in the camera on 4500 Kelvin. Perfect dead center. I changed again the color temperature with the LEDzilla in front of the camera, make it really strong, and I adjust the Kelvin in the camera, and boom, 2800 Kelvin, everything looks good. Let's take a look on the monitor assist. We have the peaking, zebra, false color, and blue only. The peaking enhanced the lines, the border, the edges, and you can adjust the color. It's really important that you find the right color for your picture. If this is not really an option, you can go or switch to a black and white picture. Now you find your designated color. If even this is not enough, for instance, you have a really flat profile from the camera, you choose this line only. It's look like an alien scan, but it's really handy if you have a really low contrast picture to find your peaking. The next is the zebra. Zebra is really common in all the video cameras, and you can adjust the point where the zebra shows you the overexposure in the scene. But I'm personally not a big fan of the zebra. I like much more another tool, and this called false color. And if you say false color is too much information for me, please give me some moment to explain how powerful, easy and fast this tool helps you to expose your picture right. On the left side you see the color line, the percentage, the value of the color. Red is on the top, mean red is the sign for everything is overexposed. Everything what is red in the picture is overexposed. When I adjust my aperture now and I check with the false color, I see in a light gray everything is perfect from the exposure. The false color based on the IRE values. But if you set the IREs to percentage, you are really close. 100 is red and red is dead. If you are between 58 and 77, it's light gray. It's nearly perfect for skin tones. The same is for darker color. You find very dark blue color is black, more than black. Probably the point where the noise start to distracting the picture. And in comparison to the waveform monitor, you see exactly which part in the picture had which value. On the waveform, you see that in the vertical line there is anything or there is something, it's too bright or too dark. But not where in the picture, which part of the picture is over or underexposed. And this is the reason why I prefer the false color for my exposure. For my first shoot with the Sony A7S and the Atomos Shogun in 4K, I went over Frankfurt by night from a skyscraper. And here I also used the false color to set my exposure. The difference between highlights, blowing out highlights from the light in the city and the darkness of the sky. And I don't want to underexpose or overexpose the picture. So for this critical shot, because I didn't get a second chance, I have to be sure that my exposure is perfect, set on the point. We can also overlay some lines. These are the TV lines with the safe area for titles, and we have a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio cinema scope line. So there is no need to put any tape on your monitor anymore. And here it is, the new kid on the block. Yes, the focus zoom 1 by 1. It means on a 4K footage you see every single pixel. And you can swap it around like on a tablet or on a smartphone. It's really cool. And if this is not enough, you can go to 2 by 1. In 2 by 1 it will zoomed in, but sometimes it's really important to get the last step for your focus. Let's go in the menu, display option and adjust screen. The screen is calibrated on Rec 709. And in Rec 709 you can adjust your lift, your gam and your gain until you are totally lost. And in this case, reset. For this example, I set the picture profile in the camera to S-Log. With S-Log we have the maximum dynamic range of the sensor available. But the downside on S-Log is that the picture looks flat. We have no contrast, we have low saturation of the color, and it's hard to find the edges for the peaking and for the exposure. It's hard to judge your picture. For this we can switch to C-Log. C-Log emulates how the flat picture looks when it is graded to Rec 709. The recording is of course the flat profile picture, but for the working with the camera it's much easier when you have a preview of the graded image. And now it's time to rumble. The A7S from Sony. This is the camera we start. Everybody knows this camera, everybody loves this camera. Full frame sensor, 60p in full HD and 120 frames in 720p. And an absolutely low light monster. And 4K. 4K? Not until now, but the time had changed. The Shogun is there, and now we can record 4K out of this beautiful camera. Exclusive for this review, I get really early hand on the Shogun. And what did I do? I make a film in the night on the top of a skyscraper in Frankfurt. And what we see here is all shot with 3200 ISO, no color correction, a little bit of UIV curve for the contrast, and that's it. But I do a little bit more. I shot a music video with Ben Riggs, a singer-songwriter duo, for their new song You Say It. We have 4 hours time in the bar, and with the low-light capability of the Sony and the tools the Shogun gave me, it was really a pleasure to work. All shots were made with 3200 ISO on the Sony, and as you see here, it was really dark. Without the Shogun, in most of the scenes I had no idea what I'm filming with a normal small LCD on the backside. But with the Shogun, yeah, I think this is a perfect combination. The Shogun and the Sony A7S, yeah. And thank you, Devin. He was my assistant and my behind-the-scenes cameraman. And this shot also, only with the camera and of course in 4K with the Shogun, it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And for all these girls and boys, they love to see these scenes in original 4K. I put up a 2-minute clip with the best scenes I shot with the Shogun and the A7S from Sony on YouTube. Now let's switch to the menu of the Sony A7S. When we go to the right menu with the suitcase and go down to HDMI settings. Here we can set the HDMI resolution, leave it on auto. The info display is the overlay, we don't want this, and then we have to choose the TC output. This is a timecode output. When we enable this, the record control is also on. And now we are able to start and stop trigger the Shogun from the Sony. It means when you push the start button on the Sony, when you find it, then the Shogun starts also with the recording. This start-stop trigger does not work in the Panasonic GH4 at the moment, but there will be a firmware update for this camera and then it works the same like on the Sony. To make the next step visible, we have to connect the Sony with the Shogun or a 4K monitor. Now we have the options to enable the HDMI 4K output. Enter yes, 25 frames per second in the PAL world. And when we switch the Sony to NTSC, then we get the option to choose 30p or 24p, depending on if you want to shoot in NTSC or in the cinema mode. When you now try to change something in the HDMI settings, they are grayed out. The solution is really easy. You have to disconnect the camera from the Shogun. And now you have access to all the options. Let's look on the Panasonic GH4. This little baby is famous in the world and so many fans use this small little camera because it can record 4K internally, but only in 8-bit 420. But the camera delivers 8-bit 422 and even 10-bit 422 out over HDMI. So this is a task for the Shogun. So I put the Shogun on and I tested it, and definitely I will show you the difference between 420, 422, 10 and 8-bit. And I want to visualize this, not only explain and all the math, I want to show the difference between 422 and 420. Let's take a look how we set up the Panasonic GH4 with the Shogun working perfectly together. Let's step into the menu and go down on the first page, go down to section HDMI record output. We have three options here. We have the bit mode, we have the info display. This is set on off. This is okay, because when you set the info display on, you get all the overlays from the camera on your screen. Sometimes you need it for an external monitor, but not when you want to record on this. And we have the 4K down convert. This stands default on auto. Please make sure that it's off. Now let's go out of this menu, step up to the recording quality. At the moment the camera is set on 1080p 24 frames per second. Let's step up to 4K to 2160 in 24 frames per second. Okay, let's jump back to the last menu, HDMI record output. Here you have the option to select the outgoing bit mode, and at the moment it's 422 8-bit external recording, and you have to choose also 422 10-bit. And this is really cool that this small camera delivers a 422 10-bit output over HDMI. The only downside is now at this moment the camera cannot simultaneously record internally, but it's okay. We want to test out how it performs in 10-bit 422. And with this we came to the main question. What is the difference between 420, 422, 8-bit, 10-bit? A lot of discussion, a lot of emotional discussion in the internet, in the forum and so on. And the problem is when you have a picture shot with 422 and 420 side by side in your timeline, it's most of the time really hard to say, is there a difference? And to make it visible, I try really hard to find a way to show this, to visualize this in real time on the screen. For this I put in 70-300mm Canon on a GH4 with an adapter, and in the adapter there was an aperture control, and with this manual aperture control I can generate a really nice vignette. Not nice, but a vignette. And vignette means we have a perfect grading, and with this we have a lot of different shades of different value in the picture. This is the 10-bit 422 recorded on the Atomos Shogun in 4K 24p. And now we switch in the camera from 10-bit to 8-bit mode, and now we can record externally in 422 8-bit, and we can record at the same time internally in 8-bit 420. When we see it side by side, the 10-bit looks a little bit more detailed, a little bit lighter than the 8-bit version. Now I put an UIV curve, a really strong UIV curve, and boom, now you see the bandings. And I think this is the best example for the difference between 422 and 420 and even 8-bit and 10-bit. Please keep in mind that the monitor you're looking on most of the time is only 8-bit. So to see the difference between the 10-bit and the 8-bit is here not so visible. But to definitely show what it means to record in 420, I think this become clear. And who say the Shogun is only for 4K cameras? Let's take a look on the Canon C100. This camera is used by thousands of filmmakers worldwide. Why? This is a video camera with ND filter, professional audio section and everything you need for filmmaking. Except one. And this is a high quality codec for internal recording. So use an external recorder like the Ninja Blade or the Shogun. Why the Shogun? It's a 7-inch IPSC panel, 1920 by 1200 resolution, And you can use it on HDMI cameras or SDI cameras. So you have not to choose between the Samurai blade or the Ninja blade, you have both together. And for the monitoring options of the Shogun and the capability to record in ProRes 422, it's a must-have for the C100. Not to connect the camera with the Shogun before you have everything set is also the rules on the C100. You have no access to the HDMI settings until you have disconnect the C100 from the Shogun. You only have to pull out the HDMI cable, and now you can set the time code and the record command on. The time code and the record command trigger the start and stop button also on the Shogun. And when you ask yourself, why is this so important? You have only to trigger one device and both start the recording. And if you want to use the completely dynamic range of this camera of the C100, what did you use? Yes, the Canon lock. A really flat profile, and we have the same problem as before when we shoot with a very flat profile. Go to the options of the display and change to C-Lock, and you have a picture that looks like you have graded it already in Rec 709. Really important to know. If you need this as a camera operator, then you have a much clearer vision of your framing. Or you have a client or producer, they wants to see how the picture looks when it's graded, then is this also an opportunity to show him how the picture can look nice. And last but not least, the old lady, the Canon 5D Mark III. With a full frame sensor and a beautiful color, this camera is worldwide on the shooting range. And what will the Shogun brings to the Mark III? First of all, external recording, 10-bit 422 on normal spinning hard drives in HD. The camera delivers 8-bit 422 out of the camera over HDMI. The internal recording is 420, and we know how big the difference is. So the Shogun is a perfect addition to the Canon 5D Mark III. A beautiful camera, still a beautiful camera, especially with a nice glass on this. Here it is a size Otus 1.4/55 millimeter. A nice glass on a good camera, and you will definitely get a good picture. How we set up this camera for external recording, because this camera put out an 8-bit 422 signal. So you have to go into the menu, the first menu from the left, in the 5th row, go to time code. And when you go to time code, you see, as on the other cameras, HDMI is grayed out. Disconnect the camera from the Shogun and you have access to HDMI. Go in and set time code on and HDMI record on. Then you can adjust the time code, free run or record run, what you prefer. Then we can go to HDMI output. And here you decide, like on the other cameras, if you see the overlay or not. Mirroring means you have a clean HDMI out without any overlays. No mirroring means you see exactly the same on the monitor like in the camera. Switch it off when you want to record externally. When you want to use your monitor assist, especially the focus zoom on a HD camera, you will recognize that the 1x1 option is gray out. That is logical because you have a full HD camera and you have a full HD monitor. The only thing you can do is focus zoom into 2x1. This is a digital zoom, but it's good. It's really good because the quality of the screen is so good. So use this to find your focus point. And what is really nice, of course, you can stay in zoom while you're recording, if you record in a camera or you record on the Atomos Shogun. Another important point is to understand the pull down. For this, I switched the camera, the Canon 5D Mark III, to NTSC. Now we record the same what we get in. What we get in is 1080i 5994. When I tap now one time on record, the Shogun makes an pull down 2x2. Now we have 1080p 2997 frames. When we tap again, we get a 3x2 pull down, and now we have our 24 frames. Let's take a look on the mounting options. Of course, you can put the Shogun right on the top of the camera in a cold shoe adapter, but I prefer to put a cage around the camera, especially the smaller camera, the Sony and the Panasonic. With the cage, you have a much better feeling and controlling of the camera. And on the top, you put a ball head and secure your Shogun. Always double check and make sure that everything is tight and proper secured. Another point and the vulnerables part of the camera is the HDMI connector. And for this, I highly recommend to use the cage that is with the Sony A7S to protect the HDMI connector. And here you see a mounting option. I use the America arm from Sakuto and the base plate from Sakuto. Let's go back to the Shogun. When we look on the back side of the Shogun, then we see there's only space for one battery. But there is a solution. It's called power station. This brings continuous power also to the Shogun. It calls continuous power dual battery system. Two batteries on the back, you have DC in, DC out, and you have also an USB connectivity. This you can use for lamps or even for out device like this Zoom H6. The power station will be available in early 2015. And the best, there is already space in the case for this. A last recommendation is the Spider Checker. It's a Spider HD. It comes with the Spider Cube, the Spider Checker and the software, and also the Spider himself, the Spider 4 Elite. But there is also a Spider available for the Shogun or for all the other Atomos devices. And if you want to know how it works, please go on this video I made for the Ninja Blade, and I explain in detail how you calibrate your monitor. It's the same way you do it for the Shogun. But back to the Spider, especially with the Spider Checker, you have a calibrated color chart and you have a neutral gray chart also, and this is really important for the white balance. I use it before I shot. I take a couple seconds with the Spider Checker, or minimum with the Spider Cube, to get my white, my gray and my pure black. I hope you enjoyed the last 40 minutes of information and technical input and probably some answers for particular questions, especially this 422 and 420. I think this makes really clear how important it is to get a much better codec than most of the camera can record inside. Let's take a short look in the future. There will be some interesting and really necessary firmware updates for the Shogun coming in 2014 and early 2015. We get additional functions like a higher frame rate for 4K. We get the RAW from the Canon cameras, and for this I will make a special podcast C500 working with the Shogun from Atomos. This will be really cool. And as I said always at the end, these are tools. The camera, the lens, the light, and even the monitor are a tool. Or I have to say, the Shogun is a little bit more than only a tool. It's a really nice tool. It makes really fun to work with different cameras and with this beautiful screen and all these functionalities. But in the end, it comes down to your story. It makes no sense to have all this fancy stuff, but no idea to tell a story. So how you can learn this? Go out and shoot. Don't sit on your computer in the chat room and have all the time the discussion about this latitude and this fancy stuff, and here we have a feature, and hey, go out and shoot with the things you have. If you are lucky enough to purchase one of the Atomos Shogun, you will see it definitely helps in your daily business or on your next shoot. For this, with best regards, your Stefan Czech.